I don't hide the fact that Firefly Generations is my least favourite of the Firefly novels. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't hate it, and I would certainly say that it succeeds in many areas, but for me, it represents such a missed opportunity. This isn't going to be a full fat review of Firefly Generations. I have more complaints and indeed compliments than just what I'm going to discuss here. In this video, I just want to discuss my biggest disappointment. Firefly Generations doesn't feel like it fits into the larger narrative. Generations is set between objects in space and those left behind. That is to say, it is supposedly, chronologically, the first story after the end of the series. The plot is as follows. Mal finds a special map that only River can read. It leads to a generation ship which the Alliance is hiding out at the edges of the solar system, far further than Serenity has ever voyaged. River leads the crew to the ship, which they think will contain valuable artifacts. River seems mysteriously drawn toward the ship, and as the story progresses, we learn that it's because on board is a man in cryosleep called Silas, who was the first subject of the academies. He is the River prototype. As the story unfolds, we get the sense that River somehow knows Silas, even though they've never met, and she seems to yearn for Silas, being partially in awe of him and hopeful that he can offer her answers to questions she has about herself. Then Silas wakes up. He spends about 5 minutes with Mal, Zoe and River before running away and going on a rampage, killing all the Alliance soldiers who've been dispatched to try and put him back to sleep. Then we spend 100 tedious pages of everyone running around the ship, Silas trying to kill everyone, the Alliance soldiers and the Hands of Blue trying to subdue Silas, Kaylee, Jane, Mal, Zoe and River trying to meet up and get out of Dodge. Silas briefly encounters them again and tries to kidnap/run away with River, but the crew escape Silas and reach Serenity just before the Hands of Blue set the whole ship to self-destruct. So, what's my problem? Number one, I just couldn't buy for a second that Mal would trust River to lead them on this crazy quest. This is supposedly set right after the series. Mal has only just begun to think of River as even really a proper person, and now he's going to let her lead them on what is objectively the most dangerous voyage they've undertaken. He knows that she's still fairly nuts.
You know, you ain't quite right.
It's the popular theory.
Let me reiterate how insane this mission is. The Generation ship is orbiting a partially destroyed planet that is further out than Serenity has ever ventured. Look how the book describes it. Uninhabited and unsettled, it orbited billions of miles distant from the blue sun, way beyond the orbit of the gas giant Burnham, too far out from the core to be considered worth naming. It takes them 20 days of voyage to get there. They're going seriously off the beaten track. If they have some kind of power failure like an out of gas, they're totally doomed. Absolutely no hope of rescue. This is a super risky exploit, and yet Mal trusts River, crazy River, to get them there. And for what? Mal doesn't even have a guarantee that the ship even exists, let alone contains valuables. I don't buy it. Mal even says on more than one occasion in this novel that he doesn't trust River, that he can't trust River. And yet, you put your crew's lives in her hands because she can read some mysterious map? Come on, Mal, give me a break. Problem 2. River seems possessed of too much agency in this novel. She's apparently seeking out answers about herself, at first subconsciously and then with greater clarity as the novel progresses. I levelled a similar criticism of River in my review of Life Signs. River just shouldn't be possessed of such clarity and agency as she is portrayed as having in these novels. As I said then, it undercuts her character arc in the movie. Problem 3. River has questions? Fine, makes sense. But she gets answers in this novel. We see Silas in action as an unstoppable killing machine. We see what River may become. But she shouldn't know this, and nor should the rest of the crew. At this point in the story, they shouldn't know that she has the potential for such combat prowess, or the kind of carnage that she's capable of. That's a big surprise and reveal in the movie. Introducing it in Generations just undercuts that. And now here's why it's such a missed opportunity. because with a slightly different direction, this story could really have worked to enhance the larger story of Firefly. If they'd set this story after the movie, before Leaves on the Wind, Tim Lebbon's story would have been far, far more compelling. After the events of the movie, River returns to basically full sanity now that she's no longer carrying the secret about Miranda with her.
River.
I'm alright. I'm alright.
So imagine this River, totally sane, but still not entirely sure what she is. She knows what she's capable of, but doesn't really know why the Alliance did what they did, or what it means for her life going forward. She knows what she can do, but not necessarily who she is. So she finds this map, and upon discovering that she alone can read it, decides that this map may lead her to some answers that she's been looking for. So River, fully sane and possessed of full agency, goes to Mal and says, I believe this map will lead me to answers about myself. I want to follow it. Mal can then credibly say, after the events of the movie, you know what, River? You've proven yourself. I completely trust you. Let's do it. Also, a long voyage, which sort of gets us out of the verse for a little while, really aligns with my plans right now, because the Alliance are hunting us more than ever since we broadcast the signal. Then you'd have River really lead this quest, not in a vague, oh, something is calling to me kind of way, but with real purpose. There'd be a specific intent and agency which this new sane River would have that the River from the show just doesn't have. And what's more, with no wash, River would actually be flying the ship herself, which to me is a far more potent symbol for the trust that Mal, now realistically after the events of the movie, would have in River. Setting the story here would have other benefits too. Lebbon really struggles to write insane River. Most of the book she sounds totally lucid and not at all like she does in the show. What's more, the ludicrous weeks-long timeline of this novel doesn't really fit into the already cramped timeline near the end of the show. These issues would have been alleviated by moving the story to between the movie and Leaves on the Wind, where we know River is returned to sanity and there's an 8-month gap in the timeline anyway. The story we got is full of continuity errors, not only the character arc problems that I've discussed. I can't really consider it canon because of how many blunders it makes, but with just this minor change, you could have told basically the exact same story and really enhanced the larger story of Firefly at the same time. This could have been such a great addition to Firefly if you'd just taken a slightly different direction from the outset. It's so frustrating. Sadly, I think this novel is emblematic of the flawed approach Titan has taken to these novels. Individually, they're pretty decent, ranging from fine in the case of Generations to excellent in the case of The Ghost Machine. But they seem not to care so much about how these stories fit into the larger Firefly story, both from a nuts and bolts continuity perspective and from a character arc perspective. There's a carelessness present, which I find really disappointing. These novels could have been such a superb addition to the Firefly canon, but for a lack of a clearer and larger vision, they start to fail in this regard.